Max Cavalera, Soulfly. You watching Overdrive, the home of heavy freaking music. Stay metal, yo. See you next year.
Hey guys, you are back with Overdrive.ie, and I'm here with Tūranga from Alien Weaponry, and we're going to get into it about the brand new album Terra, which is actually being released at the end of this month, 28th of March to be precise, and it is an absolute fucking face melter of an album. It's absolutely awesome. Dude, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to Overdrive.
Hey, how are you? Good morning and or good evening, depending on which side of the world you're on. Thanks for having me.
Listen, man, this album, oh God, it's kind of when you're following a band from the debut through to sophomore album, and then everything is going great, and you're just thinking, oh man, there is no way that they can raise the bar even higher. And oh my God, did you do that? I guess the best place to start would be, how does this album, Terra, continue sort of the integration, I suppose, of the cultural side of things, the Maori side of things with you?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, thank you very much. You know, we are feeling very happy with what we've created here, you know, and we can't wait for everyone else to get their hands on it. You know, the response so far, whether it's to the new singles or the new songs that we've played that aren't singles, but we've been playing them live already, has been, you know, sort of overwhelming. And when we started this process, you know, a big shift in this album was my full inclusion in the writing process, since being in the band, because I jumped on the band at the tail end of the second album, so the bulk of it had already been written. And the cultural side of thing, of course, is kind of what glues the whole Alien Weaponry thing together. You know, so even though we may be evolving all the music that sits beneath it, and, you know, Lewis has developed more vocal techniques and vocal textures to just continue this sort of going up, it's the cultural element and us singing in Māori about our people, about our, you know, history, that roots it in Alien Weaponry. Even though on this album, you know, we've got, you know, the songs that have been written by me for the first time, and, you know, they may have sounded a little different for people. We're not too sure, you know, what they feel like. Do they recognize that it hasn't been written by Lewis? And new production, because working with Josh Wilbur, who was played a huge role in the sort of general step up, I think, that came out of this album. You know, so there's so many things have changed in the behind the scenes of the band, so to speak, that it was very possible that a lot of people are going to be like, what the heck? But that cultural element is what brings it right down into
the roots.
It's the root, you know, and it's literally the glue of Alien Weaponry's identity.
Like the stuff that you brought into this album, is that stuff that you had kind of swimming around your head for a while, or was it the slate was wiped clean and you guys all sort of said, right, we need to start writing this new album, and then that's when you started coming up with these ideas and sort of song structures and whatnot?
Yeah, so a lot of it was a clean slate, you know. It was like the only exception to that rule was 1,000 Friends, which is probably the song that sounds the most different, because I had written the music for that, like the guitar, way before. Like that was an old song that had sitting on my computer somewhere, you know. Mm-hmm. So excluding that song, what had happened was, it was like we'd done the touring and we were on tour with Gojira and we were wrapping that up, and then it was like, okay, it's time to kind of get stuck into it. What are we going to do? What is the plan? Because there was a lot of things that came through the writing process of the second album that we didn't really like. Every song that made it to the second album was every song that was written. There was no surplus, you know, so what ended up happening was there are songs on there that Lewis regrettably doesn't even really like, you know, which is something you never want to have happen, ever. The way that they wrote music before I joined the band was like to sit in a band room with a little recorder and jam for hours on end, and then you'd have to siphon through it all and find this riff, and, you know, it was a very like laborious process. I'm the only member of us that has like musical theory knowledge and like, you know, classical music training and this sorts of things. So I said, no, dude, we've got to change this up. Like, and just at that time, we got given Presonus' Studio One DAW software all installed on all our computers. I was like, and neural DSP plugins and stuff. So it was like, I was like, okay, this is how I want to write. You guys are welcome to do the way that you're used to writing if it helps, but I would recommend doing it this way, which was to sit at home, write a whole bunch of songs separately, come together, and then get to work, you know. And so that's what we did.
I mean, it sounds from what you're saying that it was kind of a big milestone, I guess, for the other guys in terms of the way they're creating albums, creating music, writing songs, and just being creative in general. So this could be kind of the way forward as of now, going forward. Was it everyone
Totally
was happy?
You know, yeah, because it took a little bit for them to get used to it, you know, like I think in the first few months or whatever, I'd written like 15 songs and then they'd written like 2, you know what I mean? Because it was so different for them, you know. But then as the time, because you know it's been years we've been working on this now, as the time went on, you know, that those numbers started to even out a little bit more, and so even more so now, I think by the time we hit album number 4, they'll be fully, like, it'll become the integrated process now. The Randy collaboration came about probably, like, I would say minimum a year before we even knew that we were working with Josh. Josh wasn't even in the picture, like, back when I messaged Randy, because Randy he'd messaged me out of the blue about a book that I'd recommended on my social media, you know, and he's an avid reader and he likes history, and it was a book about anyone who was interested in diving deeper into Maori custom and tradition. And I'd see this message one day on my Instagram, Randy Blythe. Oh, what is he? Oh, heck. He'd never talked to me before. Hey, man, I'm Randy. Nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. I bought this book I saw you recommend. It's a great book, you know, and then started this conversation. So he kind of broke the ice, so to speak, you know, like, it wasn't like I had to reach out to him out of the blue. A few months later, I'm sitting in my car and I'm listening to the demos, and there's this particular song, and I'm like, I feel like it needs something else, you know, what is it? And then one day it finally clicked. I was like, oh my God, it's Randy. I need to ask Randy. But because it's Lamb of God, particularly for Lewis, is his favorite band of all time, and a huge influence on Alien Weaponry, you know, one of, if not the biggest influence on Alien Weaponry's music has been Lamb of God, and Lewis always talks about Randy's lyrical writing as an inspiration for the way he writes his own lyrics. So I was like, I'm not going to tell him, because if Randy says no, he's going to be very upset. So I went home and I went, hey man, you know, we got the song, I think you might sound great on it, would you be keen? And of course he said yes, which was awesome. So then, you know, time goes by and schedules change and blah, 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 blah. And here we now finally are over a year later in the studio, and oh, it's Josh Wilbur. Oh, perfect. So then we kind of knew that even though it had been a long time since we talked to Randy about the collaboration, it was 99% going to be locked in now that we were with Josh, you know. So much so that Josh was like, I'm just going to go to his house and record him at his house, because he was on tour while we were recording, so he couldn't come out to the studio. But the only thing that happened was the song changed. So Taniwha was not the song that I was listening to in my car. It was actually Hanging by a Thread, which is on the album still.
Oh, okay.
And you know, the original vision was during the big breakdown of Hanging by a Thread, you have Randy. So Lewis ended up doing his own verse again on that. And why that changed was because the first song on Omens, the main hook is Hanging by a Thread. And Josh picked that out and was like, I don't know if you want Randy singing something so close to a Lamb of God song.
Yeah.
So you can either change the lyric or change the song.
Change the
And
song.
Lewis didn't want to change his lyrics because he wrote that song. So we changed the song. And it ended up being Taniwha, which we ended up actually thinking was a better choice in the end anyway, you know. And Randy was super stoked to be a part of it because now it was a Maori song and he likes all that stuff. And he even had some Maori words in there that he put in there. And
Wow.
you know, maybe a surprise to people, like when they get their hands on the lyrics, he wrote all those lyrics. They sound like they've been written by someone from New Zealand, you know, like his awareness and his understanding of our country and our culture was so deep. He was able to write lyrics that I think people thought we wrote, and we were like, no, he had full control and we never even altered anything. You know, he would text me like, hey, does this sound right? Does this sound work for you? And I was like, dude, no comments. This is perfect, you know.
So quickly, just back to this album again, and I just wanted to touch on with Lewis's the lyrics with Lewis. I felt I just have notes here about what I felt I took away from this album is like it was kind of like, obviously there's themes of cultural clashes and hopelessness, despondency, etc. Is this like the way Lewis writes, is this from kind of an ethnographic point of view? Like, is he seeing this around himself, or is he watching stuff that's on TV, or is it kind of a combination of just sort of everything, or is it a direct influence of stuff that's happened to you guys personally, or your family, or you know, like where?
Yeah. So the lyrical split kind of works. Lewis writes everything in English, so every lyric that is sung in English on the album was written by Lewis. And then the Māori stuff was predominantly me, and then a few of them were like me and Henry. And the way Lewis tends to approach it is stuff that, it's like a more personal experience thing. So mental health, relationships, his opinions on social media, his opinions on wars and conflicts that are happening outside of the country, and not necessarily to us, but something that he is witnessing and feeling affected by. The Māori stuff, on the other hand, we know when I go to write it, it's a whole mix. It's all Māori centric, but it's not necessarily. So like Mo Moko, the first signal I wrote as someone who has facial moko.
Yes, about the face.
You know, so that one is more of a personal experience based song. But then we've got the namesake song of the album, which is Tamanui Te Rā, which is a Māori mythology story. So, and then there's things like Crown, which are about the way Māori have been affected by colonization. Not me specifically, but I've got family who are or family who are alive today who are in less fortunate positions than myself, you know.
Yeah.
So the Māori content is a little broader. Oh, we've got the song in there that's about the cyclones that happen. So that's weather events, but that's actually a climate crisis commentary, you know.
Yeah.
So the Māori stuff tends to be a little broader, and it's not necessarily always personally lived experiences.
I mean, in the long scope of things, you guys have achieved such a phenomenal amount. But doing things like, you know, you're going out with Kerry King on tour, is that a kind of a mind-blowing moment for you at the start, and then you sort of get into the routine of being on tour, and it's like, oh yeah, hey Kerry, how's it going? And you're like, man, that's Kerry King.
Yeah, it's this funny thing, you know, we've been doing it long enough now, and of course the boy's longer than I've been doing it.
Yeah.
Where you kind of get this understanding, you know, of like the work environment that you're in, because it is a job at the end of the day. Sometimes like the Gojira tour, for example, like Henry has Gojira tattoos on his body. So like when he went on that tour, it was kind of like, you know, or like Randy with the song, you know, like Lewis is like, it's like you every now and then something happens that kind of takes you outside of what you've been training your brain to do, which is be like, everybody's just a person. We're all people. We're here to do our job, you know, and have a fun time while doing it. But yeah, there's these few moments where sometimes you're like, oh my God, you know, like, damn, bro, that's Kerry King. And there are a few things that help ground you in these environments, you know, and one thing is like, particularly on this Kerry King tour, unlike some tours where it's like agents and that just figure it out and put these bands on the road, Kerry had specifically asked us to be on this tour, you know. So that alone was like because we saw him watching us at a festival last year. We saw him side of stage, and then the next thing we heard was, you're going on tour with Kerry King. So there are sort of moments like that help. Some people would, maybe it depends on who you are, but you know, like for some people I think that would send them off into that whole like, oh my God, what the heck kind of mindset. But sometimes for us, it actually does the opposite. It grounds them. You know, it's like, oh, look, he's just down here with us. You know, he's seen us. He's seen a band he likes, like we would see a band we like or a musician we like. And he says, I would, you know, he just happens to be in the position where he gets to say, I want them, instead of we would like to be with them. Yeah. Another great example is Keanu Reeves. We were playing some festival and he was playing with his band Dogstar.
Yeah, yeah.
I would argue that even though the band was lower on the bill, from pure star power, he was the most famous person there. And do you think he was hiding in some green room in a fenced off section of the festival? He was in eating with everybody else, you know, drinking the same beers as everybody else was, you know, where there were other bands on that billing that were in their private section fenced off by security. I won't name names, you know, but so you can see, and Kerry reminds me of like that, what I saw with Keanu, you know, like there was
he's just real down to earth.
really down to earth, you know, and just a great guy. And also, he's been playing shows longer than any of us in Alien Weaponry have been alive.
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity there to learn a lot, not only from him and his bandmates, but also his crew who've been doing it nearly as long, you know. And there's for bands who are trying to reach this stage, you know, and achieve this level of a career, you know, that you'd be silly to get all these opportunities and not try and take something home from it.
I just wanted to ask you about the documentary premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. Like, what's the internal view of that, of how it was received? Were you happy with the kind of the outcome of it? And could you see yourselves doing something like that possibly again, maybe 5 odd years down the line, or even further, when I guess there's a bit more sort of history between present day and the future?
Yeah, you know, because we haven't even really had a proper global release yet, you know, like, yes, it did the Tribeca Film Festival, but then it all came here to New Zealand, and everything about the documentary for the past year or so has all been New Zealand. You know, the streaming right now is only available in Australia and New Zealand. The cinema debuts were only in New Zealand, and so actually we haven't really had the opportunity to let our global fans like get their teeth into it, because it is a great documentary, and I say that unbiased. I don't see this documentary as a music documentary. It is a coming of age documentary following family that happened to be in the space of a heavy metal band, you know, but it follows Henry and Lewis from like 16 years old to Lewis's 21st birthday is kind of the you know, the climax of the film, and it goes through all the personal growth, and then obviously me joining the band is kind of happening in there halfway, and all the dramas and all the tours and the van touring to bus touring, you know, and all this growth that happens. And what I do think is great from the music perspective is we're used to seeing documentaries of bands who are already famous. They've got jets and big buses, and like they're playing stadiums, and it sells people on the idea of the dream. But it doesn't necessarily give you all the reality that comes before that, you know. And so you see in this documentary, they're sleeping in tents and vans, like, you know, on their way to some of the biggest festivals in the world. And they're still sleeping in a van and a tent, you know, like there's so many bands that never make it past that point. You know, we feel very fortunate that you, potentially most bands, you know, you would argue that most bands stay below that level. That's a very small percentage that make it up to here. So, you know, I think it's cool to bring awareness and sort of ground the realities of what this industry is like, particularly in 2025. And if we were to do it again, you know, in another 5-10 years, then it would probably be more about the music, you know, because now we've got the story on the family. This is about where did Alien Weaponry come from? What is it? You know, who are the Lewis and Henry, the brothers, you know, and what does it all mean to them? And then now, if we do it another 5-10 years, it would be an opportunity to be like, and this is where we are now on the music side of things.
Okay, so just finally, post album release, we're coming into, in this part of the world, spring, into festival season in the summer. What's on the agenda for Alien Weaponry for the remainder of 2025?
Currently, our schedule ends at the 28th of March.
Okay.
Like, so we're all, you know, we did Kerry King. We're currently on a New Zealand tour. And then at the end of the New Zealand tour, the album comes out, and that's as far as our behind the scenes people have gotten. Okay. All we know is that they're working on it. But yeah, we're all we can, fingers crossed, because last time we released an album, we didn't tour it for like until 8 months later. And so we do not want that to happen again.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining me, man. And
yeah, no worries.
Talk again.
And thank you very much.